All right, hey. This is my first video making with my contacts in and not my glasses. I wasn't going to make a video at all because the last video I made, it was day one of my 2-year-old having the virus, and she had this fever of 102, and then I had to give her Tylenol and it would break and then it would come right back, and she was miserable. She was sick. Like, I called her pediatrician. I didn't know what to do because what am I going to do? What's the hospital going to do? You know, she was drinking. It was just awful. And then of course she was throwing up, and me and my fiance and I, we both caught the virus for the first time. And it's weird. I thought I had the virus before. I wasn't for sure, but I had like kind of like a flu, like a cold. I don't honestly think I've ever had the flu. And so I wasn't for sure if I've had the flu. I wasn't for sure if I've had the virus, but this past week and a half, I was like, oh yeah, this is it, like, for sure. And I did the test, and sure enough, and finally it's passed. So it's been honestly a fucking nightmare. And you know, the weird thing about it is I didn't expect to feel any type of way about the virus. Like I said, I thought I had it, but I think I just had like a head cold in 2020. But it doesn't feel like anything else I've ever had in my body. Well, that's not true. The only thing that for me that the virus felt like that was comparable at all was when I almost died from MRSA. I was an IV drug addict. Like I've talked about in another video, it was a very traumatic health scare. I was in the hospital for two months. I almost died. I poisoned my blood. I shot up through dirty needle practices, MRSA, into my bloodstream, and I went into renal failure, organ failure. I was on a ventilator, you know, kidney failure. I was in a coma. It was awful. They knew I was in there for shooting dope, and I was still on a liquid fentanyl just to keep me comfortable. Like my body was dying. I was airlifted. It was the first time I was ever like life flighted in a helicopter from one hospital to another. And I woke up a few days later in the ICU on a ventilator, catheter, like all that. It was horrific. And I had to get like 8 hours of antibiotics for 2 months. And like I said in another video, it was weird because that's how my family knew I had relapsed, when I almost died from MRSA. And I had been doing this like exhausting juggling of kind of like keeping my habit a secret, acting like a normal person and doing like normal things. I had relapsed after the one period of extended sobriety I had, where I went back to college. I got my bachelor's degree. I actually got a job as a social worker using my degree, and it was my one shot to use my degree. Because of all my legal troubles, it was like the only place that I could have gotten a job that would hire me. And I'll just go ahead and say it now because it's been years after the fact, but I lied to get that. If you're a drug felon, there's no such thing as doing your time, from my experience. Your time is never done, because once you get that label of felon or con or ex-con or whatever, it's like you are a marked person for life. You know, you can't get HUD housing if you qualify financially, if you have a family, if you really could use that assistance. You can't qualify for HUD housing. You can't live in a fucking trailer park. You can't work at Walmart. There's so much bullshit that basically you would have to have like a sordid past, or, you know, like a drug problem to like be stuck in a position to want to live in like these fucking shitty unacceptable like HUD housing apartments or shitty trailer parks. But sure enough, you can't even do that if you're a drug felon. So I got this job because I lied, and they hired me. And so it was my one shot to keep this great job, like an actual career with a salary and all that good stuff. And I have this like IV drug habit, and I have all these mental issues that when I was sober, I had only addressed my addiction from a drug standpoint. I didn't do drugs, and at first I didn't want to do drugs. I wanted a normal life, and that wanting was like enough. But then ultimately, like, I just felt that, like I said, it like that restlessness, that self-destructive restlessness. And I know now that what exacerbates that, like kind of like cabin fever in my soul, what exacerbates it is like this lack of sense of self, that I had no sense of self, but I didn't even know I didn't have a sense of self. And so I had this like emptiness and this hurt, and I didn't know how to deal with the hurt, which made it hurt worse. So I had all these like things that I just wanted to numb, or I had this emptiness that I wanted to like kind of enhance or like remedy. I wanted to like to be more alive, and I wanted to hurt less, and I didn't know how to fix it in an organic, authentic way. I just knew how to fix it in a synthetic way. And you know, you can't synthetically fix a problem. You can synthetically mask the symptoms of the problem that'll just pop back up later on downstream, bigger and worse than ever. And so anyway, my family found out that I had relapsed, and I had been like living this double life when I woke up in the hospital, and I was almost dead. And it was very traumatic. The reason, there were two things that made me go to the hospital, because I'll be damned if at the time, for like a few days, I knew something was really wrong, but I didn't know I had shot at MRSA. I just thought I had missed a shot, like missed my vein. But two things. One, like in the course of 6 hours, my vascular system, my veins, the blood had started to like turn black, and I could see it looked like a Sharpie was traced like through my veins with the black Sharpie. But it was just like something, it was terrifying to look at. When I saw that, I was like, oh shit. And I went to Walmart, and I was so exhausted, I couldn't even walk for like 30 minutes. I had to sit down, like something was wrong, and it was my body like shutting down. And that's kind of, that level of exhaustion that I have never felt before is kind of how COVID felt for me too. I just felt exhausted. I couldn't even think, and my brain still feels like fuzzy. Even though I'm like tested negative, I still feel like really tired. And it feels, that MRSA feeling is the only thing that's even remotely comparable. But overall, the virus felt very, it felt unnatural. The way it like ebbed and flowed, the way my symptoms would, it's like I didn't just get sicker, and then start to slowly recover. I got sicker, and then I would get better for like a 10 minutes or 2 minutes or maybe even an hour. And then I would be like worse than ever. It just seemed, it felt unnatural, like period. So I don't know. It did. You know, it's just the way it felt. It did not feel natural. So follow the money, right? It's like so obvious, but what are we going to do, right? Fuck it. When I've been like sick and taking care of, you know, myself, my daughter, I have had 3 things that I've really depended on for the past, you know, few years, and everything, like my mind wouldn't work. Everything felt so out of whack. I haven't been writing. I tried to meditate a few times in like the past 10 or 11 days, and it's just like I can't meditate in the mornings. I'm going to try to write, but I haven't been able to write at all. I've been like too tired in the morning. I can't even think. And just everything, like this virus has really affected my mental stability, just because basically it's like knocked my brain out of whack. And it's scary, you know, because not in the sense that like, oh God, I'm going to relapse. I mean, I've been on Suboxone for so long, and plus I'm just not at that point anymore where it's like, you know, it's not that I want to relapse, but it's like I didn't, you know, I still have to be very, very diligent with my mind, and, you know, finding a balance within myself and managing my thoughts and kind of like mastering my mind to the best of my ability. And, you know, meditating and writing have been like these cornerstones of my mental health. And to have that kind of like swept out from under me, to have my mind swept out from under me, it's like I just can feel like that I'm, you know, only ever going to be like 3 events or 3 thoughts or 3 bad days, or, you know, just a few steps removed from the type of person that led me to drug addiction, you know, to battle drug addiction for so many years. You know, I'll always be that person that has this like fuck it button that is like bubbling underneath the surface. And, you know, there's always a part of me that just kind of like likes to flirt with the idea of just being like, fuck it, you know, and just like throwing it all away. And that's always going to kind of appeal to me in some way, shape, and form. So I do appreciate the fact that I'm trying to find a silver lining and be like, you know, at least this, going through this health crisis, you know, our whole family was sick with COVID. Going through this crisis, like, health has made me have more gratitude for my health and my mental health, but also just kind of be aware, you know, that that I just have to really be appreciative, but also be really aware of where my head's at and what I'm doing to take control and to manage my mind, you know, because my mind is just so, I have a tendency to be so like drawn to self-destruction, and that's just who you are, you know. I think if you're just like born an addict, or, you know, you're just born kind of like with that inability to process pain. And I personally think it's one of the biggest, this is kind of like the last thing I'm going to say, but I think in my opinion, one of the biggest lies that we are kind of told about addiction is kind of that it's either going to be, well, if you have this diagnosis and this mental illness, then that explains your addiction. Or if you have some type of past family trauma or past traumatic event, like in childhood, that is the reason you're an addict. And that's bullshit. It is. Because, like, yeah, a lot of people with trauma are addicts, but, you know, every addict has trauma. You know, every addict has trauma, but not every person who has trauma becomes an addict. So it's like, which came first, you know? And I think it's kind of just another way to keep addicts down, to be like, oh, well, because you can't change your mind and you can't change the past. That's for damn sure. You know, but you do not have to be controlled by either one, you know? And for me, dealing with my mind, it's like an ongoing thing, but hopefully where I'm finally like starting to feel a little bit normal again. Hopefully I can like start writing tomorrow and get back into the swing of it, because I do miss I do miss like those activities that have like saved my life, and I haven't been able to do them for like 10 days, and I hate it. I miss it so much. So hopefully tomorrow I can start to get back in the swing of things again, because I just, you know, if I don't have this outlet for, like I said, this chaos in my mind, and and the love affair that I have with chaos, or specifically had, if I don't kind of get that release and get my, you know, my thoughts out on paper, it just like builds up, and like it just makes me want to like explode. So anyway, I just wanted to give a quick update. Have a good night.